This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. For anybody out there that is struggling to wake up people around you to what's really going on, this is a really easy example of how you can wake somebody up to problem, reaction, solution. Ultimately, what the government wants is for us to live in a state of society where we are under constant 24/7 surveillance. This isn't because they want to get their jollies off and watch us sleep during the day and do all these things. It's to protect themselves from any type of revolution occurring when people realize what these people have done to society, how they've divided us, how they've caused and gaslit people into division beyond anything that we've seen in our lifetime, how they've taken away our rights, how they've taken away free speech, how they've duped everybody, dupe and delight at the same time, into a new world order without realizing it, to giving up your rights, to giving up your private property. This is what's going on right now. And problem, reaction, solution is a simple terminology that you could use to explain to people how we're getting to this point, right? So when you see all the chaos going on in the world, you have to realize they're the ones starting the chaos. They're the ones creating the chaos because ultimately they're the ones who are going to come in with the solution. The solution is what they've wanted from the get-go. So they had to create the problem to bring about what they want, which is total surveillance. I've talked about over the years how we've got so used to CCTV, how people at first, when they talked about cameras being on homes, cameras being on stores, people used to say, hey, I don't want that camera on that building filming me while I'm driving through a stoplight. And people would say, yeah, I don't want that either. I don't want that filming me when I'm walking down the road. What right do they have to film me? Well, with the advent of technology and cell phones and everybody filming everybody around the clock and taking pictures around the clock, little by little, people have become so desensitized that they're actually okay with being filmed because they're so used to filming themselves all the time. They go, whatever, who cares, right? Because that's how conditioning works. At the same time, I've talked numerous times about all of these crime shows, how this has become the biggest, most popular stuff that people watch are these crime shows. They're fascinated by it. And they continually put these stories out there day in and day out, telling you how all these crimes keep getting solved because of CCTV footage, right? There's currently stories out there. There's been stories out there. The kid in Tennessee. These stories keep getting put out there because the cases get solved. They get people caught up in the story. They're like, what happened to this guy? This guy went missing. Why can't we find him? And they just get in and in and in. They're intrigued by it. They're fascinated by it. They're drawn into these stories. And then they want these stories solved. And who always solves the story? Who always solves the crime? The CCTV camera. And people go, we need more of these cameras. Then we could solve all these crimes, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, that's what the government wants. So they've worked in numerous ways to get you used to this type of technology and also to wanting this technology because you feel like it'll be safer for you. The reality of the matter is the government wants this type of technology not to protect you from crime, to monitor you and me at all times because they realize at some point along the way in the future when we give up so many rights that there's nothing that can be done anymore, including giving up our right to bear arms, et cetera, our free speech, that people are going to realize what's going on. It's going to be too late. And then you'll be under full-on surveillance. And if they see you trying to do something, if they see you talking about something, even mentioning the likes of the Jeff Bezoses of the world, the corporations who are behind this communist agenda, they will come to your home and they will take you away and you will likely never return. So, problem, reaction, solution. If ultimately they want cameras in every street corner, cameras in every home, cameras in every front porch. And of course, we have people who are willingly doing this because they're getting duped into doing it. They're feeling unsafe. They're putting Ring cameras in their front doors. The government's allowing criminals to come up to your porch and steal your property and doing nothing about it, right? All these things that are happening that they're doing, creating, and allowing ultimately leads to what they want, which is this. The UK is planning to tackle retail crime with more facial recognition. So they want you to see this story and they want you to go, that's just what we need. I've had enough of this crime running around. I've had enough of people jumping on my porch, stealing my Amazon packages, et cetera, et cetera. Not realizing that the government's responsible for doing it. Because in some cases, the government's paying people to do it. But in most cases, the government's allowing people to do it because they're showing that they're not going to arrest people for committing these crimes. They're going to do nothing about it until their technology is in place after you beg for it. And then they can go, well, now because of the facial recognition, we'll arrest these criminals. Everyone will go, yay! And then as we move further and further down the line, with more and more laws and rules passed, hate crime rules and laws, all this stuff, you'll realize that, wait a minute, this isn't such a good thing. that these cameras are in place. And of course, anytime conveniently that the government needs to whack anybody, like we always see in history, those cameras will conveniently be off or down at that time. So don't think that this is going to protect us from them as well, because it never will. It's only to protect them from us. That's what it's all about. Because when people realize that they've been duped, these people will have full-on control over everything. So the UK is planning on more facial recognition soon to come to America, because again, all the stuff you see in America, in San Francisco, in Chicago, in New York, this is all being done deliberately, ultimately to bring about a police state, which is a state under total surveillance. And you might say we're under it right now. Well, guess what? You won't be able to get in and out of certain places because of the facial recognition, right? And people will agree with it. People will say, hey, it's great. Now we don't have to worry. I can go into Walmart, and anybody who's, a past criminal, his face will get read on the monitor and they won't be allowed inside, et cetera. And conservatives will agree because they're getting gaslit into all this stuff with the criminals and the border. And Democrats will agree too, because obviously they're nervous Nellies and they believe everything they hear on the news. So the UK government is ramping up the use of public facial recognition, saying it wants to use it to tackle the country's rising rates of retail fraud. The Home Office says it plans to invest £55.5 million, and I'm surprised it's not 66.6. Maybe it's a typo. However, we do know the Washington Monument is 5,555 feet, 555 feet, and that does translate into inches, into 666. So there's definitely a correlation there. But 55.5 million pounds over the next 4 years, including 4 million to be spent this year on bespoke mobile units that can be deployed to high streets across the country. Live facial recognition will be used in crowded areas to identify people wanted by the police, included repeat shoplifters. So instead of just arresting these people, this is what common sense would have been throughout history, right? We have criminals out there. First of all, they wouldn't even be back out on the streets. Okay, we wouldn't have this leeway with repeat offenders, et cetera, unless it was like really severe circumstances. But instead of going, hey, all right, we're looking for this guy. We have people who are we saw shoplifting, et cetera. Well, let's just arrest them. No, they'll arrest them eventually once the technology is in place, because then they'll tell you, thanks to the technology, they were able to find them. And everybody will applaud and go, thank goodness for this technology. I don't think in any way, shape, or form this will ever be used against us, because we're good people. We're good civilians. Of course, until they tell you to share your wife and your kids with them, or they say they don't like the way that you're talking all of a sudden because you're questioning how much time of recess you're allowed in your own backyard, or until they're telling you that you don't own private property anymore. Well, then you're going to become the enemy of the state to them too. But people don't realize that that's where it's headed. So the live recognition feature will help the police identify people who are wanted, including repeat shoplifters, with images compared with specific people wanted by the police or banned from the particular location. Police in the area will then be alerted to try and track them down. Quote, to turn a blind eye to retail crime shakes the foundations of law and order which protect our society, and that is unacceptable. We are enhancing our plan and doubling down on the zero tolerance approach needed to fight back. The number of offenders being charged for these crimes is increasing. Of course it is. And while I want to see more people face consequences for their actions, our plan is designed to help put a stop to these crimes happening in the first place. So just in general, right, with these crimes, they could easily arrest these people. They could easily put things in place that would stop these crimes from occurring, but they don't want it to be stopped until they have a full-on surveillance system in place with facial recognition, and that the civilians comply to this because they think it's for their safety. And they say, I'm in, I don't care, I'm not doing anything wrong. I want to feel safe when I go to the grocery store. I want to feel safe when I go and I get my 10th shot of you-know-what in my arm at my local pharmacy. I want to feel safe. So fine, I don't care. That's the mindset, right? I don't care if they do this to me. I'm not hiding anything. That's what they've convinced these morons of. And they don't realize the same way people like me and you are oppressed now from free speech, they will be also in the future. They're gaslighting them into silencing all of us that they disagree with. And they don't realize in the future, when more and more of this stuff is in place and more of your rights are gone, these people I make fun of who sit around and play Nintendo and dress up like Sonic the Hedgehog day and night, they don't realize that they think to themselves, well, this is what I'm doing day and night. Oh yeah? And they're like, oh, what are they going to do with the climate stuff? They're going to ask us to shut our power off for 1 hour. Oh, okay, fine. They don't realize that eventually the things that they like to do, whether it's sitting around playing video games all day, they're going to be forced into compliance with all of this other crap. So they're going to have X amount of recess time. They're going to have X amount of currency. They're going to be told where they can and cannot go. And eventually they're going to go, I don't like this. I don't want to be told this. They just don't see it coming yet because they're stupid. And when it's here, it's going to be too late because of things like this. Total compliance to the government overreach, which is done by design. So they say the number of offenders being charged is increasing, and they want to see more people face consequences for their actions. Their plan is designed to help put a stop to these crimes happening in the first place. The announcement follows the creation of Project Pegasus, which sees retailers sharing intelligence with police and running their CCTV images through police databases using facial recognition tech in order to identify more offenders. However, the plan has drawn fire from civil liberty organizations, as it should. Rather than resourcing police to actively pursue people who pose a risk to the public, the government's investment in facial recognition cameras for retail offenses relies on shoplifters walking in front of marked police cameras, and as such will effectively target the lowest hanging fruit. It's abysmal waste of public money on endangering authoritarian and inaccurate technology that neither the public nor Parliament has ever voted on. This will cost not only the public purse, but the public's privacy and civil liberties. And of course it will, but people will get people are getting so comfortable with their tech that they don't care. And they don't think other people have rights anymore. Right? I get offended when people are filming around me. I'm like, I don't want to be on your camera. I don't want to be on your Instagram because I know what type of technology they're using already with facial recognition to monitor who is where at what times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people are like, oh, you're just crazy nut job, right? But when we talked about this stuff 20 years ago, everybody was in agreement. It didn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans. And it shows you how over time, being desensitized and getting accustomed to this tech, which is what they've been waiting for, helps bring about this totalitarian state. This fully governed facial recognition, all this crap that they have planned. And people are going, oh, well, I'm sick and tired of seeing criminals running amok. I'm sick of these stories. I don't feel safe in my home. Bada bing, bada boom. And the next thing you know, you're going into all these stores. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed it. I've been into some stores in the last 6 months or so, and I've suddenly seen more and more cameras. You guys have probably seen this stuff at Walmart now with the checkout cameras, right? Pharmacies have these checkout cameras where you're on camera as you're paying and you're at the checkout. This little by little. This isn't legal. Nobody gave them the right to do this. And what they go, well, this is our store. We'll do what we want, right? And you go, well, I don't want to go to your store. Well, they're putting everybody else out of business because that's how communism works. They're putting all the farmers, et cetera, out of business. You got to go to the grocery store. The grocery store is filming you. They're monitoring what you're buying. And again, eventually when the carbon footprint's in place, you won't be allowed to buy what you want to buy at the grocery store. You'll have an allowance, okay? And it's not like having a budget because your carbon footprint will mean that you can't get more than one little piece of meat if you want that, even though that'll be gone. You can't get one, you like to have a box of cookies. You can't get more than one cookie. Rationing, folks. Control, folks. That's what it's all about. And this is how you get to that point. By allowing the government to put things in without your consent. And this is what they do. They say, look, this is what's in, and everybody agrees because they go, all right, I don't feel safe. I see too many stories on the news about people breaking into homes and doing stuff inside their homes. And I don't feel safe going to the store. I see women getting punched. That's a perfect example, right? The story I did about the women getting punched in the face in New York couldn't be a faker story. Couldn't be faker. You see the video footage that they show you. Right? What does it look like? It looks like a WWF punch. Punch it into the air, right? Then all of a sudden, all these women who are getting punched in the street just conveniently go meet, and they're on Access Hollywood and Good Morning America. And like, here are the 5 women who were punched in the street. They're meeting together because of their unique bond. And now they're meeting together because the bond that they have is being government operatives. That's why they're meeting together. And they're convincing you that you're going to get punched in the face walking down the street in broad daylight. And then, of course, when the government comes out and goes, well, we can't arrest these people responsible because we can't find them. We can't find them because they have a mask on. But if we had full-on surveillance around the clock, we'd be able to see where they came from, and thus we'll be able to identify them because at some point we'll either find out what home they came out of because we could backtrack our CCTV 48 hours. So even if they came out of their home in a mask, we can go inside the building. We can follow them inside the hallways of the building, right up to the apartment door and figure out who it was. And everyone will go, that's great. Now we don't have to worry about women getting punched in the face in the streets, even though the story's not real anyway, right? And the next thing you know, you won't be able to fart without them knowing about it, watching you, and telling you, hey, don't fart. That will affect our carbon footprint here. And that's going to be points against you. Okay? That's what we're headed towards, folks. Because of stuff like this, problem, reaction, solution. A very simple way to explain to your friends why all of a sudden, we're so far advanced with technology, etc., right? All of a sudden, crime like this is running rampant, right? And don't think conservatives aren't going to be duped. They're going to be the first ones at the door asking for this, not even realizing they're asking for 1984 right at their front doors because they're getting gaslit with the border stuff. They're getting gaslit with, oh, Mexicans are going here, they're doing that. And they're going to want it because they're going to, we want to find out who's illegal, who's not, etc., right? It's going to work on both sides. There's ultimate goals on both sides that have to be in place. This is one of them. Carbon footprint's another one, okay? This is going to look different. It's going to be two brands of communism, right? One might have smart cities. The other will have what they call freedom cities. It's all an illusion. It's dystopia. It's a nightmare. It's hell on earth for all, okay? And this is how problem, reaction, solution works. I thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Instead of arresting these people, right? Instead of stopping the crime like cops used to do in the past, they're allowing it. They're allowing it to bring this about. Thanks again for being here, everybody. Hope you're all well. God bless you and your families, as always.